you. Good morning, folks. My name is Rory Cremin. I'm the director of the ClanWilliam group. What I want to talk about today is how we can use technology to enhance the patient journey through our healthcare system, which is something that we at ClanWilliam group are very focused on. So very briefly, who are ClanWilliam group? We're an Irish-based healthcare technology and services business, headquartered here in Dublin. Our business is split roughly 50-50 between Ireland and the UK. And we work across most facets of the healthcare system, from GPs to medical consultants across different disciplines, to hospitals, to pharmacy. And we provide those clinicians with software and related value-add services to help them enhance the level of care they can deliver to their patients. So it's very consistent with our stated objective as a company, which is to make healthcare better for everyone. So when I talk about the patient journey, what do I mean? Well, very simply, I mean the journey, the path the patient takes as they move through our healthcare system, whether it be in this country or indeed any country. The journey is generally very similar. So it starts with a sick patient paying a visit to their GP. Their GP will probably need to refer them to a specialist consultant in their local hospital, where they'll have some further diagnosis and tests carried out. Perhaps they'll need a procedure or surgery, which will take place at an acute hospital. And then once they're discharged from that acute hospital, they may go into a care home facility for a period of a number of weeks. They will almost certainly have to pay repeat visits to their GP and consultant, and they will almost certainly go on a course of prescribed medication. So that's the path a patient takes through our healthcare system. The problem is that their data doesn't move with them. So the GP doesn't have full access to the consultant and hospital record. The consultant and the hospital don't have access to the patient's medical history with their GP. The poor pharmacist only gets to see a prescription. They don't see any of the other data. And the patient themselves doesn't have access to their data, to their health record, in a way that can help them manage their own treatment, whether it be something simple like repeat medications or how to better manage a chronic illness. And even if the data is available to these different parties, it's never in real time. It's paper-based, it's manual, it's prone to error. It always lags where the patient is at any point in that healthcare journey. So if that's the problem, what's the result of that problem? Well, the result is none of us are getting the kind of healthcare system that we want. And the kind of healthcare system that we want is integrated, it's joined up. It's where there are, first of all, better patient outcomes, i.e. healthier patients. It's where there's better patient care, i.e. happier patients and happier patient families. And where costs are being managed in an optimal way across that system. Now, you can have a philosophical argument about whether healthcare should be primarily publicly funded or privately funded, but I think everybody could agree that we shouldn't be wasting money in our healthcare system. And unfortunately, when you're running everything on paper, when you're running everything manually, there is an awful lot of waste, there is an awful lot of money that it doesn't go in delivering better care to patients. So, we firmly believe that technology can play a big role in solving some of these problems. So we've seen how technology has brought about transformation in lots of other sectors, whether it be manufacturing, retail, financial services, improving quality, improving outcomes, driving operational performance improvements, driving increased operational efficiency. But if we're all convinced of that, then why hasn't it happened in healthcare? Why is healthcare relatively untouched by these technological innovations that have done and brought so much benefit to other sectors? And I think one of the reasons for that is that the healthcare system is such a big organism, such a big beast, so many moving parts, so many vested interests, that people don't know where to start. And the risk is that if you start too big, you take on a very large project, you think you're going to change the world with a new system that you're putting in, you'll fail, because you'll find that actually you spend a huge amount of time and money working on that particular technical project, but you don't get the outcome you want. You end up just wasting a lot of time, a lot of money. And we've seen examples of that in this country, such as PPARs, for example. The other risk is that you start too small. You take something that you think is manageable, but actually it doesn't deliver any real benefit, so you're wasting money that way as well. So I think it's this combination of fear of failure, facing into an enormous challenge and not knowing where to start, that has actually led to the point where we don't see technology being employed as much in healthcare to improve outcomes as we do in other sectors. So, as I mentioned earlier, at ClanWilliam we work across the UK and Ireland, so we've seen firsthand what's worked in both of those jurisdictions. Our team has several years' experience working in different parts of the world, and we formed some views, I suppose, as to what we think can work best in terms of enhancing patient care in terms of delivering that kind of integrated electronic digital healthcare system that we talk about. The first thing, and this is going to sound really obvious, is putting patients and clinicians first. Putting them at the heart of what you're doing, making sure that whatever you're building is meeting their particular needs. Now that might sound obvious, but you'd be amazed at how many times it actually doesn't happen. How many times a technical team delivers a solution that actually doesn't deliver what the users want, or perhaps a solution goes into a hospital or another healthcare scenario or setting whereby the project's being run by administrators and managers, but 90% of the use case for that particular system is with clinicians, and they don't like whatever's delivered the other side. So unless you're working with clinicians and patients, unless you're putting them at the heart of what you're doing, I don't believe you're going to be successful in terms of the outcome you want. The second thing I think that's needed is a broad healthcare strategy that doesn't define inputs and solutions, but defines results and outputs. So a good example of that might be an output that says we want to deliver patients information in real time that can allow them to better manage their own healthcare, whether it's easy access to order repeat medications from their doctor or pharmacist, whether it's a program they can run in their own time to treat a chronic disease. That's an example of an outcome. And a strategy should be focused around that instead of what web technology to use to deliver that particular outcome. Another example might be we want to reduce the amount of paper, the amount of error that takes place in referrals between a GP and a consultant. Again, that's a good outcome, but we shouldn't get into a strategy that defines what messaging technology we should be using to deliver that. So I think an e-health strategy should be based around outcomes and results as opposed to inputs. And I think we're starting to see that now with the e-health strategy that's recently been published by eHealth Ireland. Something else that's really important is an open vendor framework. So, we're not going to find a single silver bullet solution from a single large multinational healthcare technology provider that can solve all of our problems in the healthcare system in one fell swoop. This is going to require a variety of different businesses working together. Some of them will be the big multinational players. Some of them will be smaller specialised players such as ClanWilliam. Some of them will be young and innovative startup companies who've got great new ideas that can be brought into the mix to deliver that kind of integrated digital healthcare journey. What's really important though is that the framework ensures common standards and shared data, because at the end of the day, unless you have that, you won't get the interoperability, you won't get the type of integration that's going to be needed. I think a really good example of this actually, or a good example of how not to do it, was with the UK. So the NHS in the UK in recent years have invested in something called the N3 network, which is basically a network that joins up healthcare providers throughout the healthcare system in the UK and allows data to be exchanged between those healthcare providers. Now unfortunately what they did is they put the operation of that N3 network into the hands of a monopoly, BT, which is fine on one level I guess, but on another level what it means is that BT can effectively charge what they like for companies who want to deliver services into the healthcare system to access that network. And that's actually a significant barrier to entry to young startup companies who just don't have the financial resources to invest in the connectivity they need to deliver services into the NHS. Now the NHS Digital, as they call themselves today, have seen the error of their ways, and next year they're moving to a much more open framework where it's no longer just BT who can provide access into that network. They'll allow access across multiple ISPs and they'll create a market for that connectivity. So that's the kind of mistake which I don't think we can afford to make in this country. We need to keep things open. Right fit regulation is also very important. So look, healthcare data is really sensitive, patient data is really sensitive. Of course there needs to be adequate and appropriate regulation to protect that. But there needs to be a balance struck between protecting the patient's data and also fostering a culture of innovation. So again, citing the UK as an example, anybody working across this N3 network in the UK where they're dealing with patient data has to meet very stringent standards in relation to information governance and data security. And that's fine, it's patient data, I don't think anybody would have a problem with that. But many times when you're, as a software business or a technology business, where you're innovating, where you're proving a concept with a new product, you don't have to use real patient data. You can use dummy data that looks similar to patient data to prove whatever it is that you're doing. But it's only now, in the last year, that the NHS have actually changed the rules so that if you're working with dummy data, you don't have to meet those same stringent standards around information governance and data security. So they've removed a significant barrier to entry there, again, to the young startup innovative companies who are trialling a concept with a new product or service and who just don't have the resource, the bandwidth to deal with all of the information governance that they'd have to deal with should their concept be proven successful and should they be able to take it to market at a point in the future. So we need to make sure that regulation isn't a barrier to entry, isn't a barrier to innovation in the healthcare space. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we need to take incremental steps. So this is back to the point I made earlier about where to start. There isn't a silver bullet, there isn't one ginormous project that's going to deliver digital healthcare in this country or in any country in one fell swoop. What we need to do is move incrementally. We need to look at starting in areas where the capabilities exist today to bring about change, to bring about transformation, to deliver something of value to clinicians and patients. And where those capabilities don't exist today, to do that, to work over time to put those capabilities in place so that step by step, block by block, we can deliver the kind of integrated healthcare system that we know is possible and that we know will deliver real benefits to clinicians and to their patients. So a practical example of this is something that we in ClanWilliam Group have done recently in bringing a product to market called eScript. So eScript launched earlier this year. We're very happy so far with its take-up and success rate in the market. And what eScript is all about is enhancing the patient journey for prescribing. So prescribing is something that takes place between the GP, the pharmacist and a patient. And it's currently in this country a paper-based process. And it's paper-based because legislation requires it to be paper-based. But because it's paper-based, there are challenges with that. So we ran a survey earlier this year with 1,000 patients right across the country. And what we found is that 48% of patients wanted to reduce their waiting time for prescriptions, so how much time they have to spend in a pharmacy waiting for their medication to be dispensed to them. 79% were in favour of using technology to make the whole process around prescribing medication faster and more convenient. And 43% were worried about prescribing errors that can take place between a GP and a pharmacy. So this is a real phenomenon. We see it every day, whereby a GP prescribes something but perhaps makes an error that the pharmacist picks up on paper when they read the prescription. Now that error, if it wasn't picked up, could actually have real adverse impacts on that patient in terms of their health. There could be an allergy in there could be an interaction that the GP wasn't aware of. Pharmacies are often ahead of the curve in GPs in terms of understanding what's going on the medication front, whereas GPs will be ahead in thinking on other areas. So this is the feedback we're getting from patients. We know that healthcare providers, i.e. GPs and pharmacies, have similar aims and objectives. They want these things as well. And also they want to optimise the efficiency and performance of their own organisations in terms of how they go about their work. But what do? We have a situation where legislation doesn't allow us to move to full electronic prescribing, which is available in other countries such as the UK. So this is a question that we debated. It's a question that we sorry, there's a video going up here now, but you're not going to be able to hear the sound. I didn't realise there wouldn't be any speakers. But I'll explain what eScript is while the video runs in the background. So this is something we debated in terms of what could we do to solve this challenge around the patient journey for electronic prescribing without having the ability to move to full e-prescribing. And what we came up with is eScript, which is electronic prescription notification, which basically means that when a patient visits their GP, they have the option of having the GP send that prescription electronically to a pharmacy of their choice. They still get their paper-based prescription, which is the law of the land. But while they leave that GP surgery, the prescription has already found its way to the pharmacy, it's been picked by the pharmacy, they're actually working on filling it, and they'll send the patient a text message when it's ready for collection. So the patient isn't waiting around. There is no chance of errors between the GP and the pharmacy in terms of what's prescribed. And actually, even better, the GP gets a notification back that whatever they actually prescribed is what was dispensed. So there's a clinical check, there's a closing of the clinical loop there that's not there today. So it's not e-prescribing, you still need your paper-based prescription, but it delivers some of the benefits based around the capabilities that are in place today. So it's a really good example of the art of the possible. Not a perfect solution, not full-blown e-prescribing, but taking what we can do today within the existing legislative framework, meeting some, not all, of the needs of patients and clinicians, and establishing a building block that can be used to move to full e-prescribing in the future. It's also a great example, as I said, of working with clinicians and patients and putting them first in terms of what we're doing. This came from something that patients and clinicians wanted, and we're going to continue to work with patients and clinicians to enhance and improve the service into the future. So if you want to check out the video for real, you can visit www.escript.ie. There's all sorts of information there on the service. And I'd encourage all of you the next time you're in your GP to ask about eScript and to ask whether you can use the service for your prescription. Thank you.